All right. All this is more of the 30s age of anxiety, but this is more of the non-cultural stuff. This is more of the what you call politics. You can see right here the Stalin, the Mussolini, Hitler of the world. Looking for specific questions. You had a couple of questions on the Holocaust and what these guys did. 5-year plans are big for Stalin. The Lateran Agreement, where the Pope is officially recognized, or Vatican City is officially recognized and becomes independent, and to give them a lot of money. There's just a ton of things to study for these people. I'll try to run through some of the highlights as we do this thing. So this is my old one, so this is not good. All right, this one will work. So remember we talked about Lenin dying. A big thing to remember for Lenin is the NEP. That's something you've seen very common, the New Economic Program. And it's not communism. It's a little bit of communism, a little bit of capitalism. It's the right thing at the right time. In 1922, after the Civil War, Lenin does this because they're not ready to go full-fledged communism. So he's going to try to do a simpler communism with a little bit of capitalism, um, because he thinks that's what's best for the people. That's the whole April thesis that he talked about before. So you have, and I just would throw this in here right now. You should go back and do a lot of the Russian Revolution stuff. I skipped that with World War One. If I get a chance, I'll do that later. But that's something you really need to spend some time looking at, and we can talk about in class one day. So Stalin will take over, even though Trotsky looked like the more logical choice. We reviewed all that kind of stuff. What does Stalin do? The big thing is 5-year plans. You should review the goals. That's where questions can come from there also. Heavy industry. Collectivization is a big part of the 5-year plan, something you should remember. This is where lots of people die. The agricultural world, this is where Ukrainians die. This is where a lot of hatred for the Soviet Union comes from. This is probably one of 2 or 3 things that Stalin does that makes him bad, and he does things that make him bad. So remember the 5-year plans. They start in 1927, again in 32, again in 37. And then they kind of shut down in the 40s because of the war and pick up again afterwards. Another big part of here's the collectivization, the reaction of the peasants. Remember kulaks. Review the phrase kulaks and what the kulaks were, richer off peasants, and the problems that came with them, or the problems that they faced. The big thing with Stalin is going to be purges, and it's going to be the life of these people. Okay? It is a very difficult life, but people see themselves as making sacrifices in the 20s and 30s. The idea behind communism and socialism is very appealing to lots of people because it's equality. It is people that haven't had a lot having a little bit more. It's at the expense of the rich people. If you're a rich person, obviously you don't like it. If you're a common person, a lower class person, you do. So women's lives actually improved. They got the right to get divorced. They were working in factories because he needed more workers with this heavy industry, with the goals for the 5-year plans. Um, they also got an education. If you were a woman and you were smart enough to become a doctor, he's all for it. He fully supports that. A lot of other places weren't. Remember the socialists talked about marriage as prostitution. They advocated for women's rights. Well, communism is a form of socialism. It all goes back together. It all goes together. Okay, so another big thing, another big topic was the gulags and the murders. Kirov over here is an example of the St. Petersburg mayor, leader of the Communist Party, very popular, somehow gets assassinated. Anyone that Stalin saw as a threat, old Bolsheviks that might be more loyal to Lenin instead of Stalin, were purged, which means they were killed. His wife, when she rips on him, she dies. Suicide, murder, most likely murder. Okay? Why do people go along with these show trials? Why do people do this? Because they think they're sacrificing. So once again, a lot of people say, well, Lenin picked Stalin and Stalin thinks this is the way to do it. We're just going to do it. I'm dying, I'm being murdered, I'm being killed in these, show trials after these show trials because Stalin thinks it's what's best for the country and I have to do what's best for the country. He's the guy in charge. So that's a real quick version of Stalin, but hopefully you got some of the highlights. Mussolini's actually going to come to power in 1922, also in Italy. Remember his little biography, how he was a socialist, grew up a socialist, edited a newspaper, big fan of socialism. World War One starts. He gets injured, very important to him. After the war, he becomes anti-socialist. He becomes a nationalist. Nationalism and authoritarianism and expansionism are three words to associate with fascism. Mussolini's the first fascist. He is fascist before Hitler. Hitler tries to duplicate what Mussolini does, and Hitler's better at it if you consider being terrible better at it. The things on the right are just some of the things that Mussolini's known for. These are probably more important things. Okay? The two-thirds law is how he gets power. The two-thirds law was whichever gets the most votes in Parliament gets two-thirds of the seats. Remember, we've talked numerous times about, um, what are they called now? Coalition and coalition governments still happen all the time in Italy. Well, you could compare the two-thirds law to the Enabling Act. Adolf Hitler's the Enabling Act, which hopefully we'll get to here in a few minutes. Mattiotti's a socialist. Lateran agreements with the Pope. We already talked about that. Abyssinia is Ethiopia. This is the empire. Remember how brutal the fighting was down there. All right. Women in the empire is a good comparison with Stalin. Stalin's Soviet Union. There they get more rights. Italy, they lose rights. He wanted them, Mussolini wanted them having kids, cranking them out. There's the bachelor tax. If you were a man that wasn't married, by your late 20s, you had to pay higher taxes. Get married, have kids is what he wanted. Now, if you have mistresses and stuff like that, he's got no issue with that. He just wants you to at least have one woman pregnant at a time. Remember the video. Was Mussolini anti-Semitic? Not really. Not until Germany came in and told him that he was. And then he said he was all along. This is the architecture. Classic example of fascism. Even Hitler. This is Mussolini's world, but Hitler did the same thing. They're anti-modern. This should look very Renaissance. This should look very classic. Ancient Rome, ancient Greece. That's what he builds to promote his empire, his feelings of empire. That's what this picture's, these things had to do, but also this one too of the streets. Remember this right here. The focal point should be the Colosseum. And this is a parade route. All his victorious troops would be marching down this road, and all the Italians would be celebrating the awesomeness of their empire. And that's what he wanted. He wanted you to confuse him with Julius Caesar. Remember this on the back of our dime. Right here, the dime appears. Symbol of justice. Takes it, makes it a symbol of his fascism. All right, what was the point of this chart? Well, you're not going to be able to answer me because I'm making a little thing you'll watch on your own, but it shows the lack of democracy. Weimar Germany and the lack of democracy before Hitler comes to power. When he comes to power in 33, right down here, it's not like they'd been a democracy. Parliament only met, what is it, a total of 13 days the year before he comes to power. So they were sliding towards anarchy. Other guys like Bruning and von Papen and others are going to try to make reforms without the help of Parliament, the Reichstag. Okay, the election results, when we looked at that, it showed the popularity of Hitler. It showed how they were trying to get other people to turn out to vote, and the Nazis kept doing it better than any other group was able to do that. So Hitler's appeal is a big thing you should review. Younger people, the disenfranchised people, but also people that want an authoritarian government. If you were anti-Semitic, obviously you liked Hitler, but that's not going to be a big part of the population, at least when it comes to voting. So you should review a lot of appeal questions. Who did Martin Luther appeal to? That's in your book. Who did Adolf Hitler appeal to? Look at who people, revolutionary people, appeal to. Okay, those are big topics. All right, here's your voting chart. We're going to move on from that. Here's the world of Adolf Hitler. Just like Stalin purged people, so did Hitler. This is the purging of the old Freikorps, the loyal troops, his brown shirts. He gets rid of them, makes a whole new SS and a whole new group of elite people. This is where he makes himself dictator. If you go back to the chart, these people were able to make themselves dictator for a few months. Hitler, with the Enabling Act, does it for 4 years. And then by the time he's done, he's the guy in charge. All right, we had new seat day. We're not going to worry about that now. Remember this art? So this art was used to look at the new society, but it's also for a really good discussion on what kind of world, is this good art or bad art kind of stuff. All right, moving on. Moving on. Let's look at, some of the things he did, public works projects. A lot of the good stuff he does, it does not outweigh the bad, but he does do a lot to help Germany rebuild after the war. This is a big topic. All right, this is a big topic. The whole appeasement. Remember that term. Remember what he does. Know what each of these things are. How he gives it away. Remember Anschluss and Lebensraum. All right, well, Anschluss is first. Excuse me. This is Anschluss. This is Anschluss. This is Anschluss. And for the people that speak German, I apologize for saying it so poorly. This is putting Germans together. Lebensraum is down here. This is living space, trying to make Germany bigger. You just added all these Germans. Let's get them more living space. So remember those terms. Remember those things. Spanish Civil War, Franco the fascist. He'll win. Remember, it's a war against the Republic, the king, people voting, Picasso's Guernica, all of those things. Franco will win and stay in power all the way till 1975. And then we had some World War II stuff. All right, some of the key battles. If you're going to look them up, I would say this is a good question. This is a good question. Obviously, a lot of this stuff is American, so you're less, and the British and the Canadians are all involved, but you're not probably going to get questions on specific battles. Just not something they're going to choose to test you on. Grand Alliance is our side, the American-British side, the Axis powers. Axis meaning like a line between Rome and Berlin, which all of Europe will turn on. That's what they thought. Those were the bad guys. Okay, ooh, then we had Pope Pius XII. Very interesting. Was he Hitler's Pope? Was he not Hitler's Pope? These conferences are big. You should review all three of them. What's decided here determines the future, and not just the future of the war, like Tehran, 1943. That's where the big three here decide to invade through France, Normandy, June 6th, 1944, instead of what Churchill wanted, which was the Balkans, down around Yugoslavia. Stalin wanted France, Churchill wanted Balkans, Roosevelt sided with Stalin. And so we invade through France. So all of Eastern Europe will be liberated by the communists, by Stalin, and that's why they are what they are after the war. Okay, we looked at this stuff. This was the beginning of the Cold War. This is Marshall Plan money. So this is being different than Treaty of Versailles. This is doing things better. Okay, Korean War was a test of this system. Then you should have read this stuff in your notes. Western Europe from 45 to 1970 is going to experience a renaissance. They spend money, Marshall Plan money. Christian democratic power leads the way. Remember Erhard and Monet and Konrad Adenauer. He's the West German. So it's going to be a Western European renaissance. Treaty of Rome is the beginning of the common market. The common market is the Euro and European Union of today. That's what this little map shows you. It starts with the European steel and coal community in the 40s, and it grows into this common market in the 50s. Remember, the British don't want in, and then eventually the British do want in, and the French say no, and so on and so forth. Okay, Charles de Gaulle, good guy to review. Decolonization, the creation of commonwealths, where the African countries and most of the African countries are free to go as long as, if you want our help, we're going to tell you how to run the country, and that's what happens. So they join. Most of these African countries join either a French Commonwealth or a British Commonwealth, and to this day they have economic ties with them because of that. So decolonization is a big topic of the 40s and 50s. Russia, still rebuilding. Okay, still rebuilding, back to 5-year plans, back to gulags, back to all the problems that they had with Stalin. Remember how unique Tito was, and then maybe we'll pick up here with Khrushchev and stuff for our last stretch run if we get a chance.